Aye. Where are you, Charles?
I'm in South Carolina
Ah.
at
Dixon.
the beach for a little while. But it was still kind of cold there.
Mhm.
We are unmuted.
All right. So we have a quorum.
We do.
All right. Good. So with regard to election of officers, I have a suggestion. I have two suggestions.
First call the meeting to order,
We did? I thought,
not on the, not like.
not on the
I
thing.
call the meeting to order at,
Call the meeting to order. It is 5:30 PM. Town of Telluride Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Thursday, May 23rd, 2024. All right, we're to order. We have a quorum. So I had a suggestion about the election of officers. We have Todd and Kathy are not with us. And thank you, Charles, for participating afar.
Sure.
I was thinking, okay. Charles, you're
Yes,
here, right?
yes, I am here.
John,
Here?
Peter's here.
Angela's here.
thank you.
And in the room, we have John Strandberg, our planner, interim planning director, is that correct? Right, Ally Staton, our attorney, town attorney. Dan Enright, our liaison with council. And on Zoom, we have Ron somewhere in a blurred house. Welcome. Ron Quarles.
Hi.
Your title now is,
Interim senior planner.
okay, thank you. And Erica, why don't you introduce yourself for the purposes of everyone here at P and Z?
Hi, I'm the interim senior historic preservation plan.
Very nice.
Thank you.
And I saw Bob, but he disappeared.
I turned his video off because he's not on the commission. Do you
Right.
want me to turn his
He
video
is a
back?
member of Hark and the public though, right? Is he still
He is, but
participating?
We don't do videos of anybody who's not part of the board
Right.
unless they're giving public comment, unless they're giving public comment.
Okay, very good. Handle it a little bit different at open space, but that's all right.
Yeah, this is quasi judicial, so it's,
It's a little bit different.
yeah, more
Okay.
formal.
Thanks for that. All right, have we done all our preliminary duties?
Believe so.
Okay. So under election of officers, we have two members missing. If we wanted to wait and have them participate in choosing a chair, we could do that and appoint a temporary chair, of which I'm happy to sit in today, if that's okay with everybody, or we can just go ahead and elect a chair. It's up to all of us.
We can have a three-way race right here.
We could.
Seems like a little bit of a coup. John, if you have an opinion,
No, I tend to agree with Angela. I think we should maybe hold off, and then if Angela could hold the reins tonight. and get us
They
through
were
the meeting.
equal. So that's fine.
everybody should be here, or as many
Yeah.
as we can muster,
Mhm.
would be preferable. And since you're happy to take the reins tonight, that would be lovely.
If that's all right
far as
with
I'm concerned.
everybody.
Unless there's any concerns from staff.
It's the temporary chair for this
I-
meeting.
Go ahead.
Unless someone else, I will make a motion to appoint Angela as our temporary chair for this evening.
And then I'll second the motion.
All right, motion. Seconded. Any discussion, Charles?
No,
Okay.
Um,
Charles, how do you vote?
Charles votes yes.
John?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Angela, yes. Okay, we're done.
Congrats.
So we can keep going. Approval of minutes. Anybody read them? And if it's not a problem, we will, oh, thanks. Okay.
They look nice and short.
This for March 28th, I'll entertain a motion unless there's an edit or something.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
And I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion by Peter and a second by John to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor? Charles?
Charles, yes.
Peter?
Yes. Peter, yes.
John?
John, yes.
Angela, yes. That done. Any staff announcements?
Well, you obviously know, I welcome
Yes, we
Erica.
have a
She's our
little-
first. We do have first time for this commission. I believe this particular commission, I believe you presented in front of P and Z before. She does it in front of Hark all the time.
Yeah,
We also have a new historic preservation planner starting Tuesday, because we're off on Monday, Darren, and she just graduated with her master's, so we're excited to have her. She'll be working underneath Erica.
what's
And-
Darren's last name?
What is Darren's last name, Erica?
Sorry to call you out.
Candelaria. I would
All right.
never get that right. Thank you. Yeah, we do have a couple Darrens. So one's a DERY and DAIR is the other one. So that's how we're keeping them separate. A quick update on the comprehensive plan. We are still moving forward with that, and DOLA is making determinations on grants in June. I heard it was early June, but that's a toss up. We'll find out then. So hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have, be able to say this thing's rocking forward with a much healthier budget than we had before. So,
Nice.
well, hopefully that's what we'll say, and that's what I'm planning on saying. So,
And the grant is for how much? Remind us.
so the original piece for the town was 185,000 that was allocated from the general fund for it. And the grants was for 150. So a total of 335, which
Nice.
is a lot for a comprehensive plan, but we are way out in the kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, there's. a
Which is
travel.
exactly where I want to be. But yeah, it's getting people out here to do everything we want to do because we want a lot of stuff. We want to overhaul our entire comprehensive plan, not just do updates and put Band-Aids on stuff. So we're like, we want a great firm and we want somebody that's going to come out and be able to handle things when they need to. So
Okay.
we're excited about that. And
Thanks to you, staff, for pulling that together, and let's keep our fingers and toes crossed, right?
yes, indeed. Other than that, I think we're moving forward.
I have a.
Oh, we have a new,
question. Sorry, go ahead.
we have a new commissioner, Peter Sante. This is his first full meeting. He's been an
He's a
alternate.
Full member.
I'll save my speech
So-
for another. day.
So let's welcome him.
Thank you. I was gonna ask, I had a conflict and had something I was hoping to sneak off to at 7. And I want to make sure about quorum, or if business isn't finished. I see Charles is on, he's a 4th. If we're not done by 7, I'm just curious, I don't want to sort of end the meeting preemptively, so I'm curious.
If we need to do that, we can continue one of the items. The last item on the list, which I believe is the sign code, which might be a little bit more questions or something like that, that can easily be continued to the next one.
The others
just
you'd
wanted to
like
put
us
that
to
out there.
advance.
The others I would like to advance
Okay.
this time. So we have one we can continue.
right.
Hopefully we will be out before then, but
Okay,
let's
great.
get
Let's,
moving forward.
let's get to it. The public comment. We have one public attending, I think. Please use the raise your hand function so that we know that you want to speak. And if you're on by telephone, which I don't believe anyone's on by telephone, are they? Okay, that's a different procedure. So everybody's muted until called upon, so. All right, we'll go to public hearing items. Tonight we have 5 items that are land use code related. Hence, Ally's gonna keep us straight. Okay, so we'll just go on to the first one here. Project title is Design Guidelines Code Amendment. The summary is a review and recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission to Town Council regarding amendments to the Telluride Land Use Code of the Telluride Municipal Code at Chapter 18, Land Use Code, Article 7, Historic and Architectural Review, Division 1, Historic Preservation Overlay District for the purpose of amending the design guidelines and standards for building in Telluride, dated January 2016 edition, per the Land Use Code Section 7-105A. And Erica, you're going to handle this for us?
I
right.
will. Yes.
Go for it.
So we don't have a presentation, we just have a brief overview. Hark identified updating the design guidelines at one of their 2023 retreats as one of their goals. And then we started the process in September with the green light from town council, who identified updating the guidelines as one of their 2024 goals and objectives. So the design guidelines are the community standards and best practices for preservation and new construction in town. The guidelines were last updated in 2015 and then reformatted in 2016. And over the last 9-ish years of using the design guidelines, staff and the board and applicants have noticed some errors as well as some inconsistencies in outdated language and many inaccurate photos. So these errors and inconsistencies were cleared up, as well as adding some new definitions and introducing the allowance of new materials, as well as updating many of the photos. So the guidelines committee was comprised of 3 Hark members and preservation staff, and we started in September 2023 and finished in February 2024. The red line draft was posted on the town website on May 3rd, and we have received no public comment at this time. And at Hark's May 15th meeting, the board recommended approval to the Planning and Zoning Commission, the amended design guidelines. And I have the full red line document ready to pull up if we want to take a look at any of the red lines or any of the revisions. But that's all I have for you if you have any questions.
All right. According to my cheat sheet here, that is your report?
That
correct?
is, yes.
Any else? Okay, thank you. Anybody else from staff contributing to that? Okay. Then I'll open it to public comment. Questions?
Staff
Is that correct?
questions for staff?
Questions. Oh, questions from us. That's right. Any questions from us?
I have a question.
John, yeah.
Erica, with the composite roofing material, do you guys have a sense of limiting that to certain materials that you guys have seen in person and they check out? Like, how are you gonna gauge what's an applicable composite roof material? Because I know that the shingles come in a lot of different types, and some of them have higher quality and are less scratch resistant, for example.
Yeah, so right now, there are 2 composite roofs in town, in the Miners Union and the Depot. There's 1 residential structure that's been approved as well. They have all used DaVinci, which is a brand that we have seen in person. They have a variety of colors and looks, I think, as close to wood as you're going to get. We didn't want to call out a specific brand in the design guidelines, but I think if someone brings forward a different brand than DaVinci, we would just need to see it in person and do a little research on it to make sure that it would hold up in this type of environment and that it has the appearance that we're looking for.
Great, thank you.
Peter.
Just comment on DaVinci, somewhat familiar. Those tend to be larger, almost twice the size of historic shakes. They look quite nice, and from a distance, when they're up high, they look fine. I have done a little research on this. I haven't found a better necessarily, but I have found some smaller, but they're not quite as nice. It's something hopefully that is going to have more options here in the near future. But just want to pass on that the scale of them is something I've been concerned by with DaVinci. And I think in the Miners Union, that's a nice tall building, and they're so far from, in the angle that you see them, it's not that apparent. But
Did you have a question for Erica?
no.
Okay. Charles?
I guess I know a lot of this was just cleanup, just looking through the red line and changing stuff. I mean, was there anything that was, I guess, when Hark was talking about it, that was maybe controversial with them, or that was more not a unanimous kind of change that we would want to discuss in more detail than something else?
I think so. Unfortunately, I'm coming in at the end of this process.
Yeah.
Jonna was much more involved than me, but I'm taking this on. So I wasn't involved in all of the meetings that were held. There were many. I think a couple of the, and Bob can obviously answer this question probably better than I can, but I'll give it my best shot. I think some of the most discussion happened around vicinity. We changed a lot of the wording from block to vicinity because sometimes it might be the context of what's across the street or on the corner versus defining it as one block was limiting our review. And then I think there was also a lot of discussion around mass and scale and changing the wording around some of those things so that instead of consider or those type of wordings, it was a little more clear that it needed to be followed instead of just consider something.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions of Erica from? Then I'll open it, this is a hearing, I'll open it for public testimony, and that would include our one public.
We do have a hand raised for public comment. Bob.
Yes, and Ally, you have to,
Yes, I just want to make sure, Bob, that when you speak, you're speaking in your capacity as a citizen and not as in your HARC position capacity.
You're muted, Bob.
I've asked him to unmute.
Oh,
Okay, that makes it difficult, because I was part of the team that, did the review. I can say that, at the end of the day, we were, unanimous in our decisions, for the selection of the changes that were, brought up, which were brought up by a number of different people on the board. So, we did have consensus, I think, to answer your first question, as we move forward.
Is that the end of your public comment?
Sure.
okay, thank you. And seeing no more public, we have a chance to ask more questions of staff.
I will add that while it was made up of a committee of 3 and staff, each red line, each section then went to the full HARC meeting to be reviewed and for any edits or additions that the full board wanted to see. So this entire document has been reviewed by the full board multiple times as well.
Okay, thanks, Erica.
Mhm.
Seeing no more questions, we'll move forward then to close the hearing and then we can discuss it. And basically, Peter, what you were representing with some of your experience with the shakes, you think? Anything else to add?
no, I just think that the scale isn't unimportant, and I think there's probably more products out there. It was just an observation I came across, is that they were generally twice as tall and about twice as wide as a typical shake.
Right.
So, that's all fine. I'm really happy that HARC's unanimous and that they managed to work through their guidelines. That's not to be taken for granted, so I don't have anything else to
Okay,
comment on.
great. John?
I echo Peter's concerns. I'm really familiar with these tiles, these shingles. They do kind of sometimes look out of place when you have a low shed roof that projects at a low elevation where you can walk up to it and see it. When they're up higher, you don't tend to have the same issues. I really think the quality of these shingles come in a lot of different qualities. And so having some sort of administrative process, I think, for staff to be able to look and, make it clear as to what are appropriate and what aren't appropriate for applications, I think will be helpful for applicants when they come through and they're trying to choose and price out what they're actually going to put on their roof. I would encourage you to look to the Mountain Village in some respects. They've been talking about these shingles for a long time, and that's where my experience comes from dealing with them. And there's some that they feel like are appropriate and some that they don't feel like are appropriate for a number of different reasons. So just kind of thinking about it internally, separate from the code amendment as to how it's going to be
Administered.
managed and administered through staff.
Yeah, I would say that on the staff level, the specifications that are produced for either it's ISTM, I think it is, for materials. And there are going to be a lot of innovations probably to this product that to say Da Vinci or equivalent might be the way to go at this point, but that's probably going to have to have some updates and following the specs that they have now that seem to be okay. Everybody else should have to meet that or be better.
And I think you get pretty acquainted with these things quickly, right? And so once you see a couple examples come through, I think, at least in my experience, I became more comfortable approving those types of shingles after you have a chance to look at them, right?
Yeah.
So it's really just the initial 10 homes that put these things in. And then once that happens, you'll kind of know what to expect.
And we do have a couple in place, it sounds like. Charles, do you have some discussion?
No, I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm okay too. Mark,
Ready to
okay,
make a
I'm
motion.
okay. Yes, go for it.
Okay, I move to recommend to the Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the proposed amendments to the Telluride Land Use Code of the Telluride Municipal Code at Chapter 18 Land Use Code, Article 7, Historic and Architectural Review, Division 1, Historic Preservation Overlay District, for the purpose of amending the design guidelines and standard for building in Telluride, January 2016 edition, per LUC Section 7-105A.
Sorry, Peter, quick amendment. You said recommendation to planning and zoning. Somebody could just make a friendly amendment.
So you read the whole.
To tell you read Hark.
I am sorry. My bad. So I got to read the whole thing again. My goodness. I move to recommend to the Telluride Town Council approval of the proposed amendments to the Telluride Land Use Code of the Telluride Municipal Code at Chapter 18 Land Use Code, Article 7, Historic and Architectural Review, Division 1, Historic Preservation Overlay District, for the purpose of amending the design guidelines and standards for building in Telluride, January 2016 edition, per LUC Section 7-105A.
Great.
I'll second.
Okay, and John seconds. Does this, Ally, motion for, under discussion need the follow-up that we usually make with motions? Or is it because it's a land use code, we don't
About the
say?
findings, is that what
Yes.
you mean? No.
Okay, so looking forward, none of these require that?
Right,
Okay,
the motions can be read as written in the.
okay, good.
So I could have just said as written.
You could.
I'm gonna remember that.
Have to read it into the record?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. No more discussion? Peter, how do you vote?
Yes, Peter's yes.
John, yes.
Charles?
Charles, yes.
Angela, yes. We're okay on that one. Thank you very much. All right, we have a second. Our second public hearing item is landscaping code amendment. A review and recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission to Town Council regarding amendments to the LUC, otherwise known as Land Use Code, Article 3, Zone District Regulations, Division 5, Landscaping, Outdoor Illumination and Maintenance, Removal or Relocation of Trees Standards for the purpose of adding citations for the Water Conservation Code. Ron, you are on. Tell us about it. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is a cleanup item. This is a review and recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to the Town Council. Hart considered this request, and it's to amend this landscaping section of the Land Use Code. Hart recommended unanimously at their meeting last week to vote to recommend approval to the Town Council when it does go to the Town Council. Town Council will consider it in 2 separate readings for adoption. Basically, the change is a follow-up on action that the Town Council took when it amended the water efficiency goals of the water efficiency plan. And then it, in 2022, modified or updated the climate action plan. New standards were adopted or approved as a part of the Water Conservation Code, and requiring new higher efficiency standards. Specifically, now applicants must submit an irrigation plan with any kind of landscape plan. Landscape plans are required for any new development. In addition to the irrigation plan, a water budget evaluation is also required, and these have to be prepared by an irrigation specialist. Once the landscaping is in place and all the irrigation is completed, they have to follow up with a water audit to ensure that they're meeting the goals. So there's really not any change to the land use code. We're just simply incorporating some of the language from the municipal code to make sure that not only staff, but the applicants are aware that they have to submit these things when they are coming in for development approvals. It is in the municipal code, but we want to make sure that the land use code, where most of the applicants rely on for these development applications, are aware that they have to provide the new water budget and irrigation plan. We are making one change to the land use code, and that's a correction. Right now, we exempt detached one dwelling residences from landscape plan requirements, and that's not what we practice. So we're correcting that language, and we're taking that exemption out. And other than that, that's really all that this will do. Again, it's not modifying any language, it's simply incorporating language from the municipal code. With that concludes my presentation.
Okay, Peter, did you have your hand up?
That's just one that's come to mind. And to perhaps prevent this from becoming an onerous thing for a small application or someone doing a remodel, how is it codified? At what point the amendments are required for, say, small applications or existing homes that are getting kitchen remodel or something?
Yeah, it only applies for new or modified landscape plans. So only when new developments have to provide for a landscaping plan. That doesn't typically apply to any of these smaller projects.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question was going to be, is it only required when there is a building permit triggered? Whether it's a
For-
remodel or a new,
For the most part. I mean, it
and only
applies-
when they have to do landscaping because it's extensive
Correct.
enough to require that.
Correct.
Okay. Other question I had, do we have any irrigation specialists in town?
I'm not aware of anyone in town, but I do know that regionally, Grand Junction and I believe Montrose have some specialists. But as far as in Telluride, I don't really know.
I was thinking that that maybe do you have any identification of how you would qualify somebody as a specialist? Years of experience doing lead
Yeah.
projects which require drip irrigation and a water budget and a plan and water conserving equipment and things. So, but
I
we can
think-
get to that in just a second.
Okay.
That's not a question, so.
I was actually going to ask about the irrigation as
Yeah,
well.
were you? Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
my perspective is that there's a lot of really good irrigation companies in town, people that do really good work. But when you look at the plans that you see as part of these packages,
That's discussion. You have a question for him.
how do you ensure that there's an irrigation specialist on the plan? That was the question.
That was
but,
the question.
But I mean, the reality is that architects do a lot of these plans, right? They work with the irrigators. So like, how do you,
That we can discuss under discussion,
so how do you qualify, irrigation
Right.
specialists, like you said?
right? I just want us to keep us on track here of questions for staff. Charles, do you have any questions?
No.
No. Okay. All right. No more questions from us as a commission, so I'll open it to the public. Is anybody there to comment?
We do have, you might remind them to raise their hands digitally if they have public.
Anybody online in the public that would like to comment, please raise your hand so we can see you and know that you want to ask.
I see none.
You see none. Okay, very good. Then I will. Do we have any additional questions of staff? Okay, then I'll close the hearing and we'll discussion. And sorry to cut you off, John.
Oh, thank
That
you.
that was good. And Peter, Charles, go ahead if you, John, if you want to.
Well, like, I mean, like I was mentioning, it's like when you see these architectural plans with landscape plans in the packet, you either require a landscape architect to do them or the architect does them, right? There's not really, typically you don't see like a plan from a landscapes irrigation specialist. You see the feedback that the landscape person has done with the architect, right? And so they show where the plants are going to be, they show where the irrigation is going to be. So in my mind, I think the reality is that architects are going to be producing these plans a lot. Unless you really specify what an irrigation specialist is, then you're going to be kind of in this loop where you're accepting plans that aren't necessarily from the irrigator, but rather from the architect or the landscape architect.
So in my experience, working in town as a landscape architect, and not an irrigation designer, I worked with Telluride Irrigation, for instance, not and San Juan Landscapes and some of the others. They have usually the one house that I worked on was a lead house. It required drip irrigation and had several boxes to check with that in that regard. So we do have a local specialist. As far as I know, just one, but the landscape contractors who are usually going to be involved in a project at that point, you would turn to them and have them do the water budget, or if they were if you were just hiring a landscape designer to do the landscape plan, they can get it together to do that.
Yeah.
If they know their equipment, they can figure that out. But I do think it might be a good idea for staff to specialize, to actually spell that out a little bit more. I think that's an administrative thing. I don't find any need to change it. What's that?
It doesn't sound like fun work to me.
Right,
as
so
somebody-
therefore the architects are gonna turn to, you know, their landscape designer and go, okay, you figure this out.
Well, and most of the landscape designers I know don't want to do that either necessarily. They're like, no, you find somebody else to figure out the water.
I'm actually very supportive of this.
I'm not unsupportive. I just know it's not.
Well, it's a change in the way they do business, that's right, but they can learn.
It's a administrative or sort of bookkeeping on the design or install side. It's not an insubstantial task in my simple understanding. I'm familiar with Idorado, our neighbors to the east.
Yeah.
And they have limited water, and they have in the last 3 years implemented similar strategies for their reasons and their concerns about their usage and the size of houses and landscapes, which
I
are.
mean, in Pandora. on
Yeah, Pandora,
Lane.
or Liberty Bell.
Yes,
Yeah,
there we go.
or Idorado otherwise, but I know that in those instances, there were people that they sought out in the Roaring Fork Valley who were versed in that already from prior experience. And I just am not familiar with that here, perhaps. That all said, I do think it's something that's important and should be monitored, and clients, landowners should be well aware. So I'm supportive, but I don't take it lightly as a requirement to,
Yeah,
especially if you're trying to do smaller modifications, and you might find you need to hire a landscape person who hires a consultant who has and the irrigation company has a consultant too, and you're like, okay, I'm just trying to do my yard. So it's.
yeah, well, I think just to comment on that, I think we have a real problem with the amount of grass in town. From someone who's very supportive of native landscaping and I find it very beautiful and it's resilient and it's just fine. Little parts of what we would call, actually Las Vegas calls it vanity grass, is basically outlawed in Las Vegas, and it certainly is in Phoenix. Those are more highly desert communities, but for good reason. We're trying not to approach desert, but we're trying to be responsible water conservationists. And that's where you start. So you don't want turf that you can't do anything on in terms of recreation. So I think this is a good change. That's my opinion. And I like the fact that single family homes are finally going to have to also participate.
Agreed.
Because that is a large amount of what we have in town. So, Charles, did you have anything to discuss?
No, I would agree with what y'all said. I think whatever we can do to kind of rein in our water usage, and if this helps, I think we're going in the right step.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion then.
I'll see if I do better this time.
Cross out the Hark one.
Yeah, I'm looking at the P and Z motion. Staff recommends that P and Z. I'm sorry, move down here. I move to recommend to town council approval of the amendment to the land use code, Article 3, zone district regulations, Division 5, landscaping, outdoor illumination and maintenance, removal of relocation of tree standards with the land use code amendment language attached to the staff memorandum dated May 7th, 2024, and updated May 16th, 2024, and with the findings of the staff memorandum dated May 7th, 2024, and updated May 16th, 2024. This motion is based on the evidence testimony provided at the public hearing held on May 23rd, 2024, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code.
I'll second.
John seconds. All right. Peter and John, you're a pair tonight. All
It's
right.
work in
thank you.
progress here.
Okay, any discussion?
I mean, I'm still a little hung up on the term
Specialist?
prepared by an irrigation specialist, but if you feel comfortable, I'm okay proceeding.
Yeah, I think that can be worked through. Charles? How do you
Charles is
vote?
yes. Yes.
John?
John, yes.
Peter?
Peter, yes?
Angela, yes. Thank you for moving this piece forward. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Next one. Number 3, Wetland Procedural Code Amendment. A review and recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission to Town Council regarding amendments to the Land Use Code Article 3, Zone District Regulations, Division 8, Wetland Regulations for the purpose of changing the order of development application submittal. And John, this is yours.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's see. This is a staff initiated item, changing the order of procedures for projects requiring wetland review to go to planning for review and approval prior to submitting for HARC for a CA. So what we discovered in the past is items are coming in, and currently the code reads that it goes for a CA before we can look at it, as far as Ron and I, for any type of wetland regulation, meaning the 25-foot setback required there, which can be reduced down to 5. So they're going to HARC and for a CA and going through this whole process of getting a structure approved. It gets approved, but HARC is not able to take that into consideration, any of that stuff. So what we've discovered is as soon as they get the HARC review, people are submitting for building permits. We're having to stop that and say, hey, you've got to come back for this. And a lot of those setbacks are within the 25-foot, which we haven't even had an opportunity to look at. Sometimes, right up on that 5-foot line. And, which there are other ways to maneuver these homes or these structures to avoid stuff like that. But when you have somebody with a vested project, it becomes very, very difficult to sit there and go, hey, we need to redo this whole thing. So sometimes that has happened where we've had to go in and say, this needs to be corrected here and here, to the point of them having to go back to HARC for a review. So it was kind of like where you seem to be putting the horse before the cart in this one. So what this does is it just simply moves the exact same requirement from going to Hark first to going to planning first, and then it would go back for a CA on that one. It was a unanimous vote from Hark for this. They were quite happy about it. The several meetings that I've attended, they've all been very, what are we doing looking at this? You know, why is this way? And it's like, well, this is the way the code's written, so we're trying to correct that. Yeah, it'll make it a lot easier for staff to work through this as well. So any questions?
Yes, Peter.
How did it end up this way in your opinion, John?
I don't know. I mean, it was obviously a conscious decision.
Ron can
However-
answer this too, if he's got an opinion, but if you're the new guy, I was like, how do you
yeah.
think we landed here? Cause I have a suspicion, but I'm curious if you
Yeah,
guys do.
I don't know. It seems like it was a conscious decision for whatever reason it was. But Ron may have an idea.
Well, I do know that it applied to any properties that were along the river corridor. For example, anything that's not along the river corridor zoning, we could take it to P&Z or for an administrative approval prior to going to Hark. So it basically applies to most properties that are affected, but it's along the river corridor. I'd be interested to hear what Peter's opinion is as to why that was done that way.
When the questions are over, when we can just talk,
Okay.
I'll re-engage. All right.
Thank you. John, did you have a question on this one?
No, no question.
Charles?
No,
I don't have a question either, but we'll get to discussion. All right, is there any public to comment? Piper? I don't-
Yes.
Okay, but no raised hands.
You'll have to ask them to raise their hand.
Raise your hand out there, public. Can't see you, sorry to call you. Please raise your hand if you want to discuss.
I see none.
See none. All right, we'll move forward then. Any additional questions for staff? Okay, then I'll close the hearing. And let's discuss. So Peter, do tell.
So I don't know, but I would wager that the planning directors perhaps were less than comfortable determining a wetland setback shy of a development application, or having some backing from a board, supportive or otherwise. And that seeing an application was a better way to understand how to react to a distance from a wetlands than just a number on a paper some feet away, without a lot of understanding of how impactful it is otherwise, or if a P&Z board or a Hark board had a negative reaction to it. So that's my background, our suspicion on how it ended up here. I do think this is a out of sequence challenge that does make a whole lot of sense.
Causes a lot of heartburn, it sounds like, down the road for everybody.
So I don't know if I have a question here, and but with, I'm wondering.
We're in
if-
discussion, so you can
So
opine away.
if the Hark review still is a logical sort of first step, or one thought or question, which it may well not be, but if it is, does the Hark review, could that not vest the wetland setback at that time and not have it be an additional step that they're trying to circumvent otherwise, or is that?
Like, why don't you just put it on the checklist?
Yeah, because I understand it's why it's a P&Z thing and the planning director thing, but it very much feels like it's a Hark broader discussion about a lot of other subtle variables, and they might not want it, and I'm not saying it should be, but that's a question that's come to mind.
Just give them a wetland delineation as part of the application packet.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot of this is because, I think Park is unfamiliar with maybe some of the wetland impacts or designation, or because they typically deal with the architecture and not the site. just been one of my, that's an aside, but one of my issues with Hark, but yeah. So can we go back and ask staff questions here, Ally? Or Piper?
You're in deliberations right now?
Yeah.
Reopen the
circular
public hearing.
Reopen the hearing.
So
Kind
you,
of a-
you have
yeah.
to reopen the hearing and allow additional public comment.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, I'm gonna reopen because we have some here, we want to have some discussion with staff here. Gonna reopen the hearing. You've given your report, but we still have some questions, so,
Okay.
I think Peter asked a question. Did you want to respond?
Peter asked why Hark is not reviewing wetland delineation and wetland setbacks.
Not necessarily. It was more, I thought, why not make it part of a checklist? I guess that was,
Sorry.
so that they're
Right when you
alerted.
said that, there was.
I think I had
Otherwise-
mentioned that, but yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
John,
why
sorry.
would you not, why do you choose to go about it administratively rather than to have the applicant provide the delineation as part of the full development application that gets reviewed as it comes in initially by staff and then ultimately by the historic architectural review committee?
So yeah, it comes in and so what you're saying is it would come in and get reviewed by staff and then like the entire project and get reviewed by Hark for approval or denial or modifications.
And that's what you're proposing?
No. This is, so currently, as it stands, the, if you need a CA, which is an approval from Hark, it goes to Hark first. And it specifically calls out in the code that it has to go to Hark first before it goes to planning and zoning to review the 25-foot setback. So this is just reversing that order. So it would go to planning and zoning, we would look at a setback, and then it would go to Hark.
Right.
But I understand your point of if it comes in to planning first, you don't know what they're trying to do. Typically, when a project comes in at this point, though, they are pretty set. However, that doesn't guarantee every single one will. So yeah, that's an item. And having it go through Hark, I don't know. There are great architects. They know, building materials and forms and stuff. It could be something we could look at down the road, but until we get a little bit more stability in this, I think it's better if we don't. Does this make sense?
So, let me understand, if there's an application filed with Hark
Mhm.
and are they immediately scheduled for a meeting?
Not immediately. No, there's actually, I think currently there's a pretty hefty backlog.
Yes.
And they can only take an X amount to, I see the grin over there.
Yeah.
Take X amount forward at
I guess my question is, you don't see that application when it's filed at all?
So
Give them a
we
red-
do see an
red light or-
application and we can say, hey, you're in. I mean, we have, we'll look at it and be like, this is, sometimes they're way in the 5-foot. But we can't really go after that until it comes in. It specifically calls out in the code that it has to get a CA before we can look at it. We see it, we know what's coming, but we can't do anything about it until that time.
So I'm going to suggest that maybe we look at approving this, have staff administer it, and see if this formula is will work as intended. If not, you'll be back.
Absolutely. If it's not working, we want it fixed.
It's
mean-
better than, I think, what the situation we put people in now. Charles, did you have an opinion on?
No, I agree. I think, to me,
We are in the
current,
public hearing section. Then.
Oh, that,
We're not in deliberation.
did you have a
Sorry.
question? of
no, I
staff?
don't have another question.
Okay, great. Then I'm going to move forward. Is there any public that would want to speak to this? If so, please raise your hand. One,
see
two,
none.
three. Okay, we see none. So I'm going to close the, we don't have any more questions, so we can deliberate. Okay. That's, I will close the hearing and we'll go to discussion of the matter at hand. Based on the response we've gotten from staff, how are we feeling about this?
I feel good. I think there's 2 ways to do it. And if staff feels comfortable administering it at the front end, I think it's fine.
Okay, Peter and Charles, are you kind of on the same line? I
Yes, I mean,
violated my own rule, didn't I?
I think as long as when it comes in front of us, we have some idea as to what's the applicant is planning, I think we can, you know, something can be presented to us, but I think if someone is just coming to us and asking us to, well, without giving us any idea of what they're gonna build, then I think it would be very difficult for us to approve anything. If that makes sense, but
But just
Yeah,
so we
John?
clear, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, this is all happening administratively. The planning director would make a determination on the wetland setbacks based on that pre-meeting prior to the HARC. So we typically wouldn't be seeing these types of
We wouldn't,
applications.
but it would be at the
Would
staff
be
level, right?
staff, yeah.
Yeah. Right. I think somebody needs to take an early look to give the owners and the architect a heads up. And that's, I think, what you're proposing. Is that right? So let's give it a go.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. I move to recommend to the Taurid Town Council approval of the proposed amendment to the Taurid Land Use Code, Article 3, Zone District Regulations, Division 8 Wetland Regulations, Section 820, Disturbance of Wetland Areas and Establishment of a Wetland Setback, D, Development Review Procedures.
I'll second.
I was gonna say, I was
I looked
gonna
at
call on
Charles to see if
Charles.
you wanted to do it.
Charles, you get the next one. Okay, thank you,
Okay.
John. Any more discussion on this? All right, Charles, how do you vote?
Charles votes yes.
John?
John, yes.
Peter?
Peter, yes.
Angela, yes. All right. Our next item is application. Let's see, we've done landscaping, we've done timing,
Application timing, so I believe next.
and now we'll do site and code amendment. Is that correct?
Oh, we haven't done the application
We have
timing.
Application timing code amendment, excuse me. A review and recommendation of Planning and Zoning Commission Procedures, Division 2, the land development process for the purpose of the addition of application timing. John, this is yours as well.
Thank you. This is another housekeeping staff, or not really housekeeping. This is a staff initiated piece. And this is adding timing for projects to be deemed complete and compliant 30 days prior to either a planning and zoning commission meeting or a historic architectural review commission meeting for new applications, and 15 days prior to a meeting for continuation. This is brought around because we are getting a lot of applications coming in literally days before a notice period comes out, which is 15 days in some instances for the paper and shorter for other ones. But they'll come in, and that puts a lot of pressure on staff to sit there and go, okay, we have to run this through. Our person in the front does an unbelievable job of punching these things out, but it puts a lot of stress on not only her, but to get Ron, me, Erica, all these items together and pushed out. We wanted a little bit of a buffer there to say, hey, this isn't complete and compliant. There is, to be very clear on this, there is a provision still in the code that I debated removing that allows for the planning and zoning, excuse me, not the planning and zoning, but the planning director in whatever capacity that is, to advance one forward if they believe things are going to be available. So there is an out in this whole thing, but we wanted something a little bit more black and white in the code to go, this is what we have. If it's not complete and compliant, it's got to sit out. If it is, or there's like one item that we're waiting on that we know is coming, we can start moving forward with it. But that was the intended goal with this, and it is a new section. So I'll leave that open for questions.
Yes, John.
I have two questions. Where does the provision live that you just mentioned, the one that grants the planning director?
B5202. So that'll be in the back of the, it's under the development review procedures under section. 5202 EC.
Sorry.
No worries. It's under 522 under
Okay,
development.
I mean, I can find it. I was just curious what section it lived in.
Ron, do you know? What section it's in?
I'd have to look it up too.
I'm just wondering if
Okay.
there should be like a second, just a reference to that provision within this provision. So when it's read, that people can understand there is, if there's a project that's not super controversial, not a lot of changes, that the director could potentially waive that noticing completion timeline.
It's
Per that
under the
section.
submission of development application.
Okay.
Um, yeah, go on.
And I think my second question just relates to the 15 days for the continued applications. A lot of times, seems like applications that get continued have a lot of loose ends. And I mean, you put 15 days, I'm assuming you feel like it's appropriate, but do you feel like there could be any benefit to having that also be 30 days, just so that you?
I
It's just-
did. We talked about that at length with staff, and the historical preservation planners all agreed that 15 days on a continuation was acceptable to them.
Okay.
So,
And they see most of it, yeah.
yeah, we went back and forth on that at length.
Peter?
I was to say, it seems very sane. You creating calendar space for important, necessary review, not sort of saying, yeah, it looks close enough. I'm curious, Ron, what your most recent, perhaps,
Ron
time-
or John?
Ron, more using that submission of development applications, 5202, less than 30 days. If that's, in your experience, something you can recall.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we've taken through a lot of applications with less than 30-day review. From the date of completion, or where we determine an application is complete. And, we're always trying to accomplish review for the applicants and get it through the process as quickly as we can. But we also have an obligation to do a thorough review. And I think this change would allow us that little less flexibility, but it would allow us to make sure that we can get these applications reviewed thoroughly.
The most recent one was the Telluride Hotel, the work session from a couple months ago. That one came in, I believe it was like 3 days before, if I remember correctly. I can't remember
Very-
exactly
very
what the dates
short
were. That
time.
was, but it was, so, stopped everything, punched it out. And I mean, you guys heard
Right.
it and did your stuff. So
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, but, do you think then that the 30 and 15, it sounds like all staff is on the same page with that?
yes, absolutely. Not only the planning staff, but the historical preservation staff.
Okay. Does legal want to weigh in on any of this? Do you get involved? No. Okay, good. Good, we'll move on. Okay. Do we have any public that might want to comment? Oh, we need to open the hearing for public testimony. Is anybody there? Nope, none, seeing none?
No hands raised.
Okay, very good. Then I'll close the hearing and we can discuss at will here. We think this is a good idea.
Seems very sane.
It's a great idea.
Yes.
I think we've all seen rushed applications and we've dealt with it at the review level that they're not adequate and there's not much staff could have done about it. So this might help.
I think it's hard. You want to help applicants and you want to facilitate them going through the process quickly, like John said, but you also want to have the time you need to do everything to make sure it's right. So
Right. It's a fire drill. You don't want it to be a fire drill. You want it to be professional and reviewed. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'm gonna do this one.
Yeah, let her rip.
I move to recommend to the Telluride Town Council approval of the proposed amendment to the Telluride Land Use Code, Article 5, Development Review Procedures, Division 2, the Land Development Process, Section 202, Submission of the Development Application.
Charles, you want to second that one?
I will second that.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, John and Charles. Any more discussion? Okay, seeing none. Charles, you want to vote, please?
Charles votes yes.
John,
John, yes.
Peter,
Peter, yes.
Angela, yes. All right, thank you. Done with that one. And our final one,
The main event.
the main event,
The main event, yes.
the sign code amendment. A review and recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission to Town Council regarding amendments to LUC Article 3 Zone District Regulations, Division 4 Sign Regulations for the repeal and replacement of this section. John.
Okay, so this is going to be really clean and easy. Sign code we have, we're repealing and replacing. So this is a little bit more extensive than the last two. The Telluride sign regulations have not been updated in the last 13 years. And since 2011, in the last 13 years, which was 2011. But since then, several Supreme Court decisions have come down that impact municipal sign codes. First is Reed versus Town of Gilbert. That's from 2015. This stated that the sign ordinance must either be what's referred to as content neutral or maybe content-based if tailored to further a government interest, which is government signage essentially. To determine if a sign is content neutral, a sign must be read to find out if it conforms. So if you have a sign sitting here that says, First Baptist Church, you can't sit there and go, this is a church sign. It's just simply a sign. It's a form. It's like a structure, or it's on a wall. You can't look at it and say, this is what it is. So a lot of old sign regulations say churches are allowed this type of sign, XXX, where you can't do that. You can't read it and go, hey, this is a church sign. You can look at what it is, meaning the structure, and go, that's a sign, but that's it. And that's across the board except for the government stuff. So what that means is you can really only regulate time, place, and manner for the sign. The second decision was City of Austin versus Reagan National Advertising of Austin. This is from 22. And this affirmed that Austin's distinction between on-premise signs and off-premise signs is not a content-based regulation and therefore can be regulated. So what that meant is you can't have like an A-frame board sitting down on the corner when your business is over here. That's considered an offsite. Anything off there, which you do end up with a lot of. So that was kind of one of the big contentious things was with the sign regulation from Reed versus Gilbert, can you do that? And the Supreme Court affirmed that, yes, actually you can. So that was kind of a win for municipalities to be able to look at that and go, okay, we can actually do something with this. So the draft sign code that was created here was designed to keep the existing guidelines in place. Okay, so this is kind of the big thing. This was a huge deal. I worked with Erica extensively at this. Ron, Jonna, Darren, the new planner, she was in on this as well. Allie's poked her head in it a little bit to make sure that everything we have that is legally established right now is still legally established, and every guideline that is still existing is still in this code. But we just went through and removed any content-based pieces. So when I say I'm updating the sign code, a lot of people get really excited. Oh my gosh, we're losing signage. They're going to allow signs everywhere. That's not the case. It is changed. I mean, you look at it and it has changed, and there are some things that have changed. I'll get into that in a second. But I would say 98% of it is exactly what you would see. So somebody that came in last month looking for a sign, if this gets adopted, they will get the exact same review of it. So that was extremely important when we were looking at this. So to create this new draft, we did a lot of research of many codes that have been adopted with this content neutral item in place and what would work best for the town of Telluride. So what we ended up doing was, first thing was we looked for one that was going to be a basis we could go off of. And we looked through many. We used Town of Breckenridge. It was a similar kind of spacage, mountain town, which helped, but it didn't have tons of the big commercial zones and so forth that you see in some of these other areas. So we didn't have to contend with that. So that was kind of easy going through that. It's been extremely modified to work with Telluride, but we also looked at places like Snowmass, Steamboat, Loveland, Alamosa, Denver in some aspects, Park City, Brentwood, California, San Luis Obispo, which is extremely progressive in their sign codes. So we were able to pull some stuff from there, which is not unsurprising if you know the area. So there was a lot of stuff that went into making sure things were working with this. However, that being said, any sign code you do, there could be a problem down the road. So there might be something, if this gets approved, might be something that comes back that we're like, hey, this is not quite working right. Or, this has created this little issue here or there. Let's modify it. Let's make sure this is easy for not only staff, but the public mostly to come in and go, hey, I want to put a sign up of this. Can we do it? So the biggest changes for this whole thing are, one, we added definitions, which will be very, very easy for staff to go, okay, what type of sign are we looking at? Does it fall in this category? That makes it just much, much easier to do, look at it and go, this is this is that. So the biggest issues beyond that were adding, where is it? Temporary banner signs, which Telluride's an extremely unique community where, for many, many, many reasons, which is one reason why we love to live here and love to be here. One of the things people don't want to see is when they walk down Colorado Ave, a big sign that says now open in front of a building. So it was like, okay, we want to be able to permit things like that. Like, hey, this is a grand opening, this is a closing. Want to be able to permit something and allow that, because the former code did not. So we want to be able to add that in there, but how do we manage that? So that's something that came from Brentwood, California. It's been modified to fit ours. What staff finds would work well for us. So essentially you can get one for X amount of time, a couple times a year, and that's it for a small size. So that kind of fits more into what goes on here. That being said, there are numerous banners that go up, like you see the film festival one right now. And you also see like the school will use them as well. So it was, how do we fit that in? Meaning these big festivals and these big event things into a sign code where you can't look at it and go, that's an event sign, So that was kind of a big deal. So with that in mind, let me scoot back to the exempt signs. So this would be the land use part of this. And the last, where is it? Oh, geez. Specific signs, signs under development.
404 is exempt signs.
Is it 406?
404.
404? Wow. You know what I'm looking for? Oh, yeah, 404L. Yes. So 3404L under exempt signs. It's the holder of a special event permit issued by the Town of Telluride Parks and Recreation Department may fix temporary signs per the approved permit. So we're not looking at that as far as staff goes. It's just approved through a different entity. So it's still a sign, but it's approved there. So that was our way of going about that. And that was actually taken from a number of other places that have gone through this. So I'm pretty confident that that's going to be something to help. And we worked with Parks and Rec extensively to make sure that was something that would work for them. So one of the other things that popped up was with Hark was they asked about all our, the public hearing signs that staff puts out and we put out ourselves. So that falls under government signs, under exempt signs. So we can actually do that. So I wouldn't say it's perfect because there's never a perfect piece, but it's pretty good for going at what we have. However, that being said, you never know. So this might be something we might see come back where we're modifying pieces here and there. So at that, I will leave it up for questions.
Okay, who wants to go first?
I have a question.
Yeah, John.
Thank you for putting this together. I think it's really clean. It's really easy to read. I'm curious why walking signs, which for people listening are the signs that people hold when they walk down the street, why those aren't listed under exempt signs.
The
You think,
sidewalk signs,
not like the A-frames when you have a sign and you're walking down the street with a sign. So it's defined within the code as a walking sign.
Mhm.
I can read the
Oh, oh.
definition. It's Sign that's carried by any person while walking on a public street or sidewalk that's visible from the public right of way adjacent to properties or public areas. So really like a, a sign that you would walk with. But I think that probably should be under the exempt signs, correct? Just because of it's a freedom of speech,
I was gonna say Second Amendment, right?
just to be able to hold a sign. And there's no regulations within the other sections of the code around displaying walking signs or the standards for walking signs. So I personally think that probably should move to that should probably be added to the exempt sign list.
Was that a
We
question?
can,
Why is it?
Why wasn't it
Yeah,
added? Yeah.
right.
yeah. That's a good question. Understands the permit not specifically required for this chapter. That could fall under 404K. Under exempt. Which is any other sign for which a permit is specifically not required by this chapter.
Just a thought, yeah.
Peter,
I was just thinking about job site signs. I don't know that I've ever pulled a permit for putting my shingle on a job fence or something. Are those listed or is that,
Yes, they are.
they are good?
They
Line
are under.
violation.
So it's so new that I'm still, even though I've worked through this heavily, I'm still figuring out which piece is where. But yes, job site signs are in here. And they are
There's no change
no
from
more
the current-
restrictive than before. And it's,
under the same.
Yeah,
Basically.
under the same
rule that
premises.
has been, that's not a change.
so you should not, it's signs under property, signs on property under development. It's 3409F. And it's total sign area not to exceed, it's 20 square feet. There's a typo there. It says 10. It should be 20. That will be corrected. 20 square feet may be erected with a valid permit for the development of real property that has been issued. So if they have a permit, you can put one up.
And what section was that might have to be amended?
It's 3409F.
Okay, correct. 10 to 20, and that's square feet?
Yes.
Okay. Charles, did you have anything to weigh in on here?
No,
Questions of staff? No,
no.
okay.
Great.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have any questions to make sure that we aren't up, signs are very controversial, so I would hope that we're not upsetting any apple carts.
The intent was to not do that at all.
Yeah.
I mean, not even just a little bit. So that's one of the other things as I said, we tried to incorporate everything in there to make sure nothing was going to go awry in any way. One of the big advantages of this is we compiled the design guidelines in here and took it out of the HARC design guidelines. So we don't have an applicant going here, and then unfortunately, Ron, I'll give him credit for this. He had mentioned there might be another reference somewhere else in the code, and I spaced it. So at your next meeting, you will be hearing a repeal of section 311, table 35, which references all these signs. So that'll just be a repeal of that section, so we don't have any conflicting stuff.
But it has to be noticed, so it will be on.
It has to
other-
go through the same process, has to go to HARC for recommendation first,
Okay,
planning and zoning for recommendation to council for 2 meetings there.
okay, good catch. All right.
I got to give credit to Ron for that.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, I'm going to open public hearing and ask if there are any public comments. Any hands raised?
There are no.
No hands raised. All right. Any further questions of staff before I close the hearing? Okay, I'll close the hearing and we're free to deliberate on this. Anybody have any further discussion?
What do you guys think about the exempt signs? Adding that?
Well, it sounds like it, John was describing it as being covered in a section that already exists. It's not specific to that. Yeah,
Yeah, well, from what you were saying, John, the code describes signs specifically that are restricted or requiring permits, and it doesn't list that personal version to be exempted because it's not listed on the list that's requiring scrutiny. So it's sort of taken care of from.
Yeah, I would just say, remember, this is in the land use code, so this is all about use of property, not necessarily Second or First Amendment conduct on property.
First-
So if someone's holding a sign, walking around with that sign, and it's not being affixed to a property or being left on the property, it's not even subject to this code.
I mean, my concern is that, you're the attorney, so I'll totally agree, but I think my concern when I look at section 3401C regulatory scope, it says no sign shall be displayed, constructed, installed, erected unless the town's issued a sign permit, unless the sign is exempt from this division. And it goes on to, say a few other things, but I'm just concerned when you have this like very plain language that says you can't display these signs unless it's exempt. Then you have a section that says these are the exempt signs. It seems like you should just add that sign into the exempt list.
So I think getting even more basic, if you go to the definition of sign, it's any device or image fixed to, painted on, or incorporated in the building surface.
Sure.
So it still has to be connected to the property somehow, not being held by a person.
Okay.
So in that case, it's not even a sign while technically, yes, we see it as a sign, it's not a sign even subject to this code.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
as long as you guys are good, I'm good.
Yeah.
To know what to sign.
Charles, any deliberation on your part?
But
No.
it's not
No?
what it says,
Okay.
it's about how it's being
Good.
displayed.
All
Sorry,
right.
I have PTSD from a guy that used to hold signs. Yeah, we're good.
Well, we certainly have parades of signs,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
At times. Okay, are we good with the way this is written? There is one correction to note, and anybody who's making the motion about going from 10 to 20 square feet.
I have it handy in the section handy. I'm happy to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Sorry, let me just go back to the top of stuff in the motion. Yes. I move to recommend to the Telluride Town Council approval of the proposed repeal and replacement of the Telluride Land Use Code Article 3 Zone District Regulations Division 4 Sign Regulations with the following changes. Correct in section 3-409F, correct 10 to 20 square feet as noted.
I'll second.
Okay, sure. John and Peter, any more discussion? All right, hearing none. John, how do you vote?
John, yes.
Peter?
Peter, yes.
Charles?
Charles, yes?
Angela, yes. Okay. I think we've come to the end of that list. However, we have board and staff discussion. Any?
I guess a little discussion. I think,
Okay.
Angela, you did a very good job.
I was
tonight.
gonna say, thank you very much,
Let's
everybody.
discuss
for the
that.
Trumps here and there. It is very different than running Open Space Commission, I can tell you.
Big great.
Yikes. Yikes. Charles, thanks for
Sorry, I couldn't
coming
be there
in
in
and
person.
making our quorum. Yikes. What, Peter?
I was just gonna say, I'm appreciative to make it under 7 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. We got 10 minutes, over 10 minutes. Excellent.
We were on schedule.
Despite-
I should pretend I'm leaving at 7 with regularity.
No, that helps.
That's really kind of nice to keep a cadence going.
I try hard to keep things straightforward and to the point with
Yeah.
things, but sometimes they go awry, as you all know.
I wanted to acknowledge Ron. Thank you for hanging in here with us. The little switcheroo here, musical chairs kind of situation, I guess, but thank you very much for continuing to be our senior planner, and we appreciate your contributions.
Oh, glad to
moving
do
forward.
it. Thank you.
Yeah. You bet. Dan, any thing from your standpoint? Okay. Okay, I will adjourn the meeting with unanimous consent with no objections, according to what Jerry Green used to tell me. At, 6:47.
Great, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Angela, I might have you present at the